Okay, hello again, everybody. I think we'll make a start, and I know that a few people will be arriving probably in the next five or 10 minutes. But let's make a start on time, so then we can also finish by 1 o'clock, hopefully. So welcome and thank you everyone for joining for today's webinar, which will be focusing on writing your marketing plan for your social enterprise. I'm really pleased to have NIKKI MATTEI here with us from Through Their Eyes, which is NIKKI's own marketing consultancy company, and she'll be telling us more about her and her background in a minute. But she's got tons of experience of working with entrepreneurs and also social entrepreneurs in developing their marketing communications. So hopefully the next 40 to 45 minutes will be really useful. So the webinar, as have the previous ones been, are part of our webinar series, which will be running the first half until about July, and then we'll do another half from September to December. We are recording all the webinars, so you can listen afterwards, and you can also, if you miss any webinars, you'll find them on our YouTube channel where you can download those and listen when it suits you. I'll send you again all the links after the webinar, so you can find the recordings if you want those. Now, housekeeping. For those of you who haven't listened before, so we'll have an hour, and we will use about 45 minutes of that for the actual webinar, and then we'll take questions at the end. So please do think of your questions, and you can input those through the chat function at the bottom of the dashboard that comes with the GoToMeeting software. So do input your questions at any point. We'll also be running a couple of poll questions throughout today's webinar, so and we'll talk you through those, but there'll be questions popping up on your screen that we'll ask you to answer, and we'll see how that goes. So I think that's probably all there is. So yeah, questions and answer at the end, 45 minutes for the webinar, and yeah, I think I'll hand over to NIKKI.
Thank you, Marika. Yes, I am NIKKI MATTEI, and thank you to all of you for joining the webinar today, which is going to help you write an ethical marketing plan, and that is focusing on profit and your social goals. Some of you might have heard the phrase, doing good, making money, doing good. So I thought I'd just let you see the goals that I've set for today and what you should be able to learn from today's webinar. We're going to look at, this is obviously about writing an ethical marketing plan, but that obviously has to include the essential elements of any marketing strategy. We'll look at including your ethical values, as I said, which are core, which should be core to your strategy. We'll look at what makes you different, who are your customers, and how do you communicate with them. And this really is the essential parts of a marketing plan. But before we start, I thought I would just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in marketing for a long time, and as you can imagine, a lot has changed during that time. There are many more marketing tools or channels, whatever you want to call them, but the principles have stayed the same, and I think sometimes that's forgotten. I spent 10 years in the corporate world, and then I moved into the small business arena when I decided to have a family. I'm a director with my husband of a company called the Personal Plant Shelter. We're a small local landscaping business. So I understand all the highs and lows, all the challenges that are involved in running a small business, so I can definitely empathize with you all. I've been a social entrepreneur myself for over 6 years. My business is called Best Think Pink, and it's about empowering women to take control of their breast health. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. In 2012, I decided to set up as a marketing freelancer because I wanted to have more impact. I'd always worked what we call client side, so I'd always been the client myself, and I really wanted to share my skills with others, particularly with social enterprises and businesses who want to make a change in the world. That's what drives me. This is why I'm a mentor for Unlimited. And then a little bit about me as a person. I love organic. I support a natural lifestyle, 100%, a lifestyle which has minimum impact on the environment and it is healthy for me and my family. My own home's probably been chemical-free for over 10 years. I also like to call myself a conscious consumer. This is a phrase you might have heard of that's becoming used increasingly in marketing terms, in that I actually think about the purchases I make. I want to know a bit more about the companies I'm buying from. I'm also mum of 2 fantastic girls, 17 and 18. I love Italy. I love everything about it, the food, the weather, the people, and my dream is to actually retire there eventually. And I also sing in a choir. So that's a little bit about me as a person. Also, to let you know, this is my first webinar. I'm used to talking to groups of women with my breast health work, but it's very different because I can't see you. I can't see if you've left the room or you're working on something else or maybe you've fallen asleep. And hopefully I won't do this because we're sat in quite a warm room here, so if I start to sort of sound a bit drowsy, you'll know why. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy the webinar, and I'm really interested in hearing your feedback. So what I want to stress as well is that this webinar is for you. It's something that's going to be a practical session that you should be able to go away afterwards and start putting it into place straight away. It's relevant whether you're a startup or you've got going already. And after the webinar, Marika will send you my template. It's not a template from a book, or it's my personal template, which will help you put together your own marketing plan. So I urge you to follow the structure that we're going to go through and that Marika will send to you afterwards. Please do schedule in some time. You've probably heard about spending time on your business and not in it. So schedule a day, half a day away, whatever it takes, where you can get away from mobiles, emails, etc., and just really think about your social enterprise. And don't skip parts, because the chances are, if they're bits you find difficult, they are probably the most important parts to get right. And keep monitoring and reviewing and updating what you've done, and we'll talk about that later as well. And most importantly, be true to yourself and your mission. Don't lose sight of why you started this all in the first place. Okay, we mentioned there's going to be a few polls as we go through. Well, the first one would just enable me to get to know a little bit about you. And the question I'm asking you is, do you actually have a written marketing plan? It's going to be a yes or no answer. It must be written down. Only if it's a few pages. It can be handwritten, it can be typed, just whether you've actually written something down about your marketing. So we're just going to wait and see if you could just answer yes or no.
Okay, so I will actually run the poll. So what will happen is there's an actual question and 2 possible answers on your screen now. Okay, so if this is working, you should have the question, and now just click the answer and I will give the responses to Nikki. That's great, thank you very much. Okay, so we have got, and I will close the poll. So I actually gave 3 possible answers, Nikki. So you said yes or no, and I also said kind of. So what we've got here is 50% of our listeners have said yes, they have a marketing plan, 33% have said no, and 17% have said kind of, ...
Okay, that's great. Well, it's good to hear that a lot of you have already got a marketing plan, but I guess you've joined today because you feel maybe that you could improve on that. And for those of you who don't or who aren't sure, then hopefully what we're going to go through today will get you started. So So you know what's coming. I'm going to show you the areas that we're going to go through together, which will basically form the basis of your plan. So where are you now? Where are you starting? Whether you're starting your business or whether you're some way down the line. What problem are you solving? That's very important. Who are your competitors? How can you be better than them? What are you really selling or offering? What are your ethical marketing objectives? Who are you selling to and what do you want to say? And what is the best way to talk to your customers? Now, by the end of when you've put your marketing plan together, you should be able to answer all of these questions. You may have already covered some of them in your business plan if you have one. Sometimes business and marketing plans blur over a bit, and I really don't care what you call them. What I do care is that you go through all of these things. And the other thing that's very important is to actually write it down. I believe strongly that you must have a written plan. There's actually research to say that when you write something down, you're more likely to achieve it. Now, it doesn't have to be a literary masterpiece. In fact, the simpler the better. You don't need to use marketing jargon, just something you can work with every day and when the time comes that you can share with others. So, as I said, you're more likely to be successful. It also helps you to organize your thoughts if you write things down. It also helps you to measure what you're doing and also to adapt and change as you go along. So where do we start? So first of all, this is the first section of your plan, which looks at where you are now. This looks at your business on the inside, but importantly on the outside too. And by that I mean the world you're operating in, which, as we all know, is changing all the time and very fast. So we'll look at each of these sections one at a time, which will then give you some ideas of like a sort of template which you can use for your own social enterprise. So the first one, what business objectives have you set yourself? Well, this is probably what you've told the bank or whoever, if you're borrowing money, whoever's lent you money. Or you may be self-funding, which is very likely when you're a social entrepreneur. But even so, you must have a plan for how you're going to make money. Even as a social enterprise, you can't achieve your objectives unless you make money. Profit doesn't need to be a dirty word. It is currently probably in the climate we're living in, but we need social enterprises to make a profit so that they can reinvest into their businesses, do more good and support others. And any objective you set must be what's called SMART. You've probably heard of this, and there are sometimes different words for those letters, but the ones I use are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-related, and we're looking at an example a bit later. So the next area to cover is about your social goals or your ethical objectives. This really is your story. As a social entrepreneur, you actually start out with an advantage, I believe. You have a great story to tell, and you're in business for all the right reasons, making money to do good, as I said earlier. You're authentic. You're a real person, not just a faceless brand. If you find writing hard, it can be useful to record yourself as though you were talking to someone and then transcribe that afterwards. Or otherwise, you could talk to someone you know, a friend, family member who likes writing. That would be someone like me. And then ask them to write it up afterwards. Because often you can tell your story in your own words a lot better when you're actually speaking than when you're trying to write it down. So that's just a little tip. So you're going to be looking basically at the reasons that you started. What social problems are you solving? What's your story? This is basically your ethical objective. Now the next section, this gives you an easy world of looking at the world around you, which will definitely have an impact on your success. And again, some of you may have heard of this. It's called the PEST. So political, economic, social. Meant to be technological, but I'm afraid that wouldn't fit in the box. So I put technology. And what I'm going to do is I've got an example of a client of mine who are about to launch a new fair trade and organic laundry detergent. So for them, if we look at political, Then EU legislation has an impact on what they're actually putting into their products. Councils are offering, well, it varies, but are offering more recycling, so obviously that impacts on the packaging that they have. There are green subsidies, and the high street has been in trouble. There is help for retailers, and those might be some of the people selling my clients' products. From an economic point of view, we're coming out of recession. However, costs are still rising for the consumer. Sustainability is an issue that a lot of businesses are taking on board. And supermarkets obviously have a huge clout still in terms of where consumers purchase their goods. And then on a social level, I already mentioned this phrase, conscious consumers. They are on the growth, and more people are starting to question the companies they buy products from. A lot more people are aware of some of the harmful chemicals that are in the products we use every day. And consumers are demanding traceability. They want to know more about the supply chain, where their products have come from, the people who are producing their products, etc. Then on the technology side, obviously online shopping is still growing. More and more people are using mobile to buy. In terms of my clients, eco-friendly washing machines are always developing, and there's obviously a demand to use less water. So that just gives you a sort of the idea of some of the issues that would affect my client, and you can then translate that for your own social enterprise. So that was a way of looking at the world. Now we want to have a way for looking at your business, or you, because the chances are it could just still be you. You might not be employing anybody. So you need to be honest with yourself. Strengths and weaknesses are the things inside about you which you can change. Opportunities and threats are external things which you can take advantage of or can be threatened by. And some of these will come from the PEST that we've just gone through. So this exercise will make sure that you're not just inward looking like a lot of businesses are, but you're always looking outwards. When you're in business, it's very easy to just focus on yourself and all the things about your business, but none of us lives in a bubble, and what's happening outside you can have a huge impact on the success of your business. So again, I did this from the point of view of my own client, and you can see here some of the things, the strengths they have. There's no direct competitor, they're organic, it's consumable, so obviously repeat purchases, and they're actually a fairly traded product, so they're supporting an Indian community. The weaknesses are they don't actually have actual fair trade certification. I put David and Goliath because we're going to be taking on some big names. It's a product from Europe, so they have no experience in the UK market. They have a small budget, which I'm sure you can all relate to. On the opportunities, then, things that you can't actively control yourself, but that you can take advantage of. Growing consumer awareness of the sort of green household market. It is a growing market. People are buying more fair trade, they're prepared to pay for it, and I mentioned growth of conscious consumers. And then the threats, EU legislation could be changed, which could impact on some of their ingredients. As it's a European product, if the exchange rate changes, that could impact. Competitors could copy us, that's always something to bear in mind, and we could have problems distribution. So again, you can fit in your own answers to that template. The next section we're going to look at is where we actually look at the market you're working in specifically. You really need to understand what people are concerned about and what their problems are so that you can offer yourself as a solution. And there are lots of places these days that you can go for information to help you. You can see I've listed here. You can see I'm not the greatest at creative stuff. I've done my best with this slide. But what it does is shows, people are talking, and these are the places that you can go to actually find out what they're talking about. One of the great benefits of social media is that you can easily become part of communities and you can become part of the discussion. Understanding these key issues will also help you when it comes to things like keyword research which will be important for the SEO on your website, using social media, and when devising your target messages, which we'll look at later. So if I gave you an example here, imagine you were running an organic veg box scheme. What are the sort of things you'd need to know about? Well, you'd need to know about the latest studies into organic food, obviously, but you'd also need to keep in touch with the latest food crisis, and there is always one, isn't there? I mean, the horse meat crisis was great, I thought, because it actually got people thinking about what they were eating. You might also be concerned about the cost of fuel, trips to the supermarket, because if you're delivering, that could potentially be helping on emissions. Online shopping would be relevant to you, and also people wanting to eat less meat, less processed food. So those, that's an example if you were running a veg box scheme. So these are all the different places you can go to find out what people are saying. We're going to do another poll now, and this is going to be about your competitors, because it's a very important issue. So I want to just get a feel for how many of you know who your competitors are, and whether you actually keep an eye on them. And you must do both. So when you answer yes or no, you need to know who your competitors are, and you need to be monitoring them. So I'll hand over to Marika on that.
Okay, right. So let's, and again, I've added a third answer, but then that's, I promised, and that's my interference ended. So you should see the question on your screen. Do you know who your competitors are, and do you monitor them? So yes, no, or third option, I know who they are, but I don't really monitor their activity. So let's just see what people say. So just click the answer that you have, and then I will read them out. That's great, and I think we've got all the answers. So what we've got is 80% are saying yes, which is great, and no one says no, and 20% say I know who they are, but I don't really monitor their activity.
Okay. Well, that's great. I'm really glad to hear that you are, because I've met companies who don't even know who their competitors are, let alone what they're doing. And so many businesses have failed recently who haven't kept in touch with their customers, but also haven't kept an eye on their competitors. So it's great that you are actually aware of who they are, most of you. But we're still going to have a look at the competitors, because it is important. As I said, you must know who they are first of all, and most of you do know who they are. And you need to be able to answer these questions about them. So what is their message? What are they doing well? What can you do better? And how are you different to them? And don't stop watching them. As I already mentioned when we were looking at key issues, social media is a good place to observe and learn. You don't have to be talking all the time. So when it comes to competitors, you can see what they're talking about on social media. You can subscribe to their newsletter if they have one, check out their website regularly, buy their products, basically anything which is in the public domain. Of course, I'm not suggesting you do anything unethical or try to destroy another business, but the chances are, as a social entrepreneur, you'll be competing with mainstream businesses, and you need to continually look at how you present yourself as different. You need to be ready to change as well, because if another business or organisation sees that you're having an impact on their sales, they're probably not going to sit there and do nothing. In some cases, there may even be opportunities to join forces with your competitors. The old, if you can't beat them, join them. If you're serving a small part of their market and you're doing it better than them. Of course, this would depend on the company you're dealing with and whether they fit with your ethical values. So I'm glad that everyone has agreed how important your competitors are. And we're now going to move on to what I call your strategy. Because we've looked at the world we're living in, and now we need to set out your marketing strategy, which is critical to your future success. And this is something I feel very strongly about. I believe that without a strategy, it's like starting a journey into new land with no idea where you're going, who you want to meet along the way, no map, and no idea of your final destination. Now you might think that's okay, which it is if you want to have an adventure, but running a business is hard enough without giving yourself the best chance of success. Now I don't know if any of you have heard of Stephen Covey, or some people say Covey, and he's written a book called The Habits of Highly Effective People. Now it's not the easiest of reads, but there are certain things which did stick with me, and one of them was a phrase which is, start with the end in mind. You need to have a vision of where you want to end up, and this is what successful entrepreneurs are so good at. They see where they want to be ultimately, and then they work out how they can get there. Too many people don't have this vision and a strategy for how they'll achieve it, and they just jump straight into doing. This is particularly common today, as it's pretty easy to set up a business, isn't it? You build a website, take part in social media, and off you go. You may look pretty good on the outside, but often there is no substance underneath, and you can also waste a lot of time and money on pointless activity. So I want to help you have a solid foundation. So before you start out on your journey, I want you to have a clear picture of your destination, a plan of your route, and the best tools to help you get there. Sure, there are likely to be unplanned events and diversions along the way, but if you always keep your end destination in mind, you can get there. So now we're going to have a look at what you're really selling. It can be called your value proposition, your offer, your USP. I really don't care what you call it. It doesn't really matter. What is important is that you really understand what you're offering to people. And it's so important to get this right, because this is what will set you apart from other brands, businesses, and will guide your marketing messages. Now, if you remember back to the slide where we looked at key issues, what people are talking about in your market, this will help you as well to decide what people are looking for. So some of the questions you want to be thinking about is, what does your brand, I'm using a bit of jargon there, but what are you actually saying to people? Now, most people have a problem or a need which has to be satisfied, and you need to make sure you know what that is. Why do people buy from you? If you have existing customers or organizations that you're dealing with, they can be a fountain of knowledge. You can talk to them. You can do surveys. You can talk to them face to face. You can ask them why they buy from you. The other thing to remember is that people buy with emotion and justify it with logic. It's worth thinking about that for a bit and look at some of the brands out there and how they do this. But for example, Thomas Cook are not selling holidays, they're selling dreams, or they're selling quality time with your family. Pizza Express, they're not selling pizzas, they're actually selling a place to have fun with your friends. And you may justify your holiday or your meal by the fact you had a special deal, or the hotel had all the facilities you needed, or the restaurant's in a convenient location for you. But that's not what you'll keep as memories afterwards, is it? And it's probably not what you'll tell others. It's also a good idea to think about the brands you buy from and why. And for me, as an example, I know this isn't the BBC, so I'll mention a brand. I buy a lot of my beauty products from Neil Child Remedies. Now, logically, I'm an ethical consumer, and Neil Child Remedies are an ethical company with organic certification, lots of fair trade supplies. However, on an emotional level, their products make me feel good, they make me feel pampered, they appeal to all my senses. Maybe not taste, well, they probably are safe enough to eat. So I want you to start thinking about those sort of questions, and I will have included this in the template that Marek will send you afterwards. So I hope you can see that this part of your marketing plan is very important, and only when you're clear on this can you really move on. So moving on, we're now going to look at how we change your financial goals into marketing objectives. So here's an example for an existing business. You might have a goal of increasing your sales by 20%, which would equate to £10,000, by the end of March, so this would be over a year period, from 50,000 to 60,000. So you can see that this is a SMART objective. If you're just starting out, obviously it's difficult. You need to set yourself a profit goal based on what you think you can sell less your costs, and this will give you a sales objective. You can obviously change this, but it's a good idea to start with something to aim for. Now let's see how we might change that into some marketing objectives. Now, marketing objectives come from your business or your financial goals, but they tend to be more focused on customers. Now this is the most, I apologize, this is the most complicated slide for you to follow. Well, I find it complicated because I'm not really a figures person, I'm a words person. So I can't go into a lot of detail about this slide. That's actually the subject of another webinar, but it'll give you an idea what I'm talking about. So on the previous slide, you were looking to increase your sales by £10,000. So here we're looking at different ways that you could do that. So for example, you could look at increasing your average order value, so what someone spends with you. You could look at attracting 5 new customers, keeping 5 existing customers. So you'd have these objectives in mind when you write the rest of your marketing plan. Again, it's a lot easier to do this when you're an existing business. When you're new, it's all about finding new customers. However, you do want to ensure that they stay customers. So looking at these examples, these 3 ways of increasing your sales, you can increase the amount a customer spends with you. You can attract new customers, which, as I said, is usually the most obvious way, but also the most costly. And often overlooked, you can hang on to existing customers. So this shows you how you can reach that extra £10,000. And when you break it down like this, it doesn't look quite so daunting. Now we're going to move on now to your ethical objectives, which, as I say, will be core to your business. And I wanted to just run a poll to see, have you actually written down in one sentence what your social objectives are? And again, it doesn't have to be typed or beautiful, but I just want to see if any of you have written that down.
Great, thank you, Nikki. And let's do the poll. So hopefully that will show again. Have you written down in one sentence what your social objectives are? Either yes or no. Oh, love this. 100% yes. We have written down in one sentence what our social objectives are. I wonder if, I don't know if there's anyone there who might want to share that through the chat function. So if there's any of you who has got that easily accessible or memorized in your head, if you are happy to share your sentence, then do type it in, and I can read a couple of those out for Nikki, just so she will get a bit of a feel for who we've got.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad to see you must all be you must be all unlimited people listening if you've got that written down. As I've said, even if you're a social enterprise, you must have financial objectives. You need to make a profit, otherwise you can't continue to do the good work you want to do. It's what you do with that profit that counts, isn't it? But this webinar is about writing an ethical marketing plan, and it's important that you consider this alongside the profits. After all, that is why you're in business, why you're a social entrepreneur, and that really is at the heart of everything you do. So I'm delighted to hear that you have thought about that and written it down. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to share my ethical objective that I have for my business. I mentioned I was a social entrepreneur myself with my breast health education business called PEST An, which is a bit on the back burner now. I'm in marketing, but I still do talks when I'm invited. It's just I'm not actively promoting myself. So I set up PEST An in 2007 in order to empower women to take control of their breast health. Now, that's quite a big goal for one person, but all change starts with one person, doesn't it? So I wanted to make as many women as possible aware of the positive action they could take to keep themselves healthy, rather than only taking action once they got the disease or knew someone else with it. So how could I create a smart marketing objective from that social goal? Well, to me, my challenge was to talk to as many women as I could, and the best place to do that was in the workplace, where I could talk to large groups of women all at the same time, as well as obviously other women's groups like WI. Bear in mind, I set up in 2007 when social media was not as powerful as it is today. Also, breast cancer is a very sensitive subject, and I felt the information I had to share was best done face-to-face, and in fact still is, even today. So I set myself this was one of my marketing objectives. So undertake 10 breast health talks during October 2010 with an average of 30 attendees totaling 300 women. October's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so it was the perfect timing. And then the action part of my plan looked at how I could make this happen by building lists of companies, by doing direct mail, email marketing, etc. And I'm happy to say I did achieve this. And to me, if only 5 women decided to take action as a result of my talk, and say one of those avoided breast cancer, then I would have achieved what I wanted, in a small way, obviously. So it is important that your marketing objectives reflect your ethical goals. Now, I hope you're still with me and that you haven't fallen asleep or gone away and had some lunch. So bear with me, we're not far off now, but we are going to have a look at one of the most important parts of your plan, about really getting to know your customers. You can see here the things that I'd like you to be considering, and I'll talk through these. Breaking down into niches. I was giving some advice to someone the other day who told me that his product is suitable for everyone. Now, this is often a trap many small business owners fall into. It may well be that your product or service is quite generic and could apply to most businesses or most consumers. However, I wouldn't recommend this as the way to market it. I always recommend that you break down your customer base into niches so that you can talk directly to them and about the things which interest them. So put yourself in the position of someone looking to buy a product. Let's take the example of a holiday. Say you wanted to go on a once-in-a-lifetime holiday where you could be part of saving the black rhino. Would you be more likely to respond to a message which said, "We offer all types of holidays to thousands of destinations to suit all budgets"? Or would you respond to this, "We are specialists in responsible tourism. We offer authentic travel to clients who want to take a holiday which allows them to visit amazing destinations whilst having a positive impact on the planet"? I'll let you answer that question yourself. I hope you will come to the same conclusion as me. So my company, if I'm a holiday company, we may offer lots of different types of holidays, but I want to talk to my clients about what they're interested in. Remember, it goes back to about what people are talking about. So also, this approach of just talking to different types of customers individually, it makes it a lot easier when it comes to using your budget, choosing your marketing channels or tools, and answering all those other questions on the list about understanding them, understanding their problem. You can then present yourself as a solution so much easier. Now, I'm not suggesting that if your product might be applicable to lots of different types of clients, but what I recommend is you start with one niche, you do that really well, and then you move on to another one so that you are making the most of your time and budget. The other area that is very important is customer experience. Now, this is another topic for a webinar. In fact, I've done a seminar on this, so I'm not going to go into great detail, but it is very important that you think about the experience that people have when they have contact with your social enterprise. Potential customers can find you in so many different places these days. They can meet you in person, see you on your website, in social media, in print, referred by someone. They need to get consistent messages from you, and you need to tell them what to do next as well, importantly. If you want to find out a bit about your own customer experience journey, there's a quiz at my website, and I'm going to give you a link at the end to that where you can answer some questions. We also need to know how your customer communicates and how they gather information. The last question here, very important, so that you can choose the best marketing channels. So now we're going to do a little example of what I call really getting under the skin of your customers. Now, this is an example of a customer called Sally. What I've told you is a little bit about her, and if you remember, I recommend that you do this exercise for all your different types of customers. You may just have one if you're really niche, or like the holiday company, you may have more. You can give your customers names, put them on the wall. I did that at a business I worked at many years ago. We had 2 core customers, and we had names for them. We had pictures. We sort of imagined them. And then they're always in your mind when you're making decisions about what marketing tools to use. So if you look at Sally, if you remember back to when I introduced myself, I gave you my professional qualifications, but I'm a person too, and I told you a bit about my personal life. This formula works for your business to business or business to consumer. And in fact, sort of our business and personal lives are becoming more blurred these days. And you probably have lots of different target markets. So often the ultimate target might be consumer, but you have to talk to the trade to get to them. If you're business to business, it is easier to get to know people personally. Obviously, with consumers, social media now is a great help. So it really depends on your business. But your customers, as I said before, are your biggest source of information. You can ask them why they buy from you, and this will help you when you come to do your messages. So looking at messages, basically, what do you want to say to Sally, and how are you going to say it? And if you remember back again to the key issues that we did at the beginning, where we got to understand what was important to our customers, what they were talking about. So here on the left-hand side, you can see the sort of messages that you might be wanting to get across to Sally. You know, we know she buys organic fair trade. We know she's a mum, and you could be talking to her about other products that you sell she might like. So this, I've obviously taken organic fair trade bias on this, which is my thing, as you probably realised. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the channels that you could use to talk to her. We saw earlier how she likes to communicate, and something that every business or organisation should be thinking about is rewarding her for recommending you to her friends. So now you can easily work out what you want to say to her and what are the best ways to communicate with her. If you have a limited budget, which I'm sure everyone will say yes to, you must focus your efforts on the most effective way to talk to your customers. It'd be nice to do all the social media channels, but, you know, hey, we're not John Lewis. So it's best to sort of focus your time and your budget on the ones that you know are going to be most effective. Now, I have definitely, sorry, slip of the tongue, I have deliberately dedicated this webinar to your strategy, and I hope you will see now why this is so important. Only now can you start to choose your marketing channels. You need to take each of your customers in turn, so you may have Sally, Peter, John, Mark, but you need to take each of them in turn and talk to them separately. Customer experience is key. You need to understand how people are communicating and finding you. And I'll give you the link to my quiz, as I mentioned, so you can track your own customer journey. Always have objectives for every channel or marketing tool that you use. And these will relate back to your marketing objectives. And you can go back and look at those. So if you remember, one of the objectives was to keep 5 customers loyal. So you might decide to start a loyalty scheme using email marketing to promote it. If you're doing a website, for example, be very clear about what you want the visitor to do when they get there. I see lots of lovely websites which clearly have no specific objectives behind them. So you need to know, do you want people to leave their details? If you do, what's the incentive for them to do that? Do you want them to make a purchase? Again, how are you going to make them do that? This all ties in with your customer experience journey. As entrepreneurs, we all have limited funds and time, so you need to prioritize. You need to spend your budget on the most effective things, as we've already discussed. For example, social media is a great free tool, but it does need time investment. And I personally believe that it's something you have to do yourself. I don't feel you get someone else to do it for you, because you are the voice of your brand and you need to do the talking yourself. You need an action plan. As an entrepreneur, you're trying to do everything. So you need to make sure you allow time in your day or your week for the other things that are important for marketing your business. So for social media, for example, you might decide to spend 15 minutes a day at the beginning or the end, or in your lunch break, and you've got to do important stuff like looking at competition, keeping in touch with key issues. I mean, it's a nightmare, isn't it? You know, how is there enough time in the day? And the only way there is time is by actually allocating time for the different parts of your business. And the book I mentioned earlier, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is very good at helping with this. So this, you'll be glad to hear, is virtually my last slide. What I would say to end is we all live in a fast world. Things are changing all the time and you need to keep up with that. As I said at the beginning, your marketing plan should be something you can use, not just something you write, you feel very pleased with yourself, and then you just put it in a drawer. And for those of you, I know most of you say you have written a marketing plan. When was the last time you actually went through it and checked whether you were still on track, whether there were things you needed to change? You need to be obviously monitoring your success, the impact you're having. So decide what's important. Don't just say, right, I'm going to check my Google web stats every day, but have no reason for doing it. Always question why you are monitoring something, because then you'll be able to take action and make a change as a result. And measure yourself regularly against your objectives and change them. If things aren't working, change it. But the important thing is that you understand why they're not working, and then you can make a change. So that's the end. We've got a bit of time left for questions. I know I've covered a lot today, and I would appreciate your feedback. Maybe that I have tried to cover too much. As I said, it's my first webinar, so I would appreciate your comments. If only 3 things really stick with you, then I'll be happy. You can see here that you're welcome to try my customer experience quiz. What I would say, thinking about customer experience, is my site is not optimized for mobile. That was a budget consideration I had to take. So if you want to do that, I recommend you do it through your PC or tablet or laptop. Please let me have any feedback. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, you can follow me on Twitter, or you can email me direct. If you have got any questions, do bear with me for coming back to you. As I mentioned, Marika's got the template for how to write the marketing plan, which she'll email to you afterwards. And that will help you along with the slides of the webinar. So thank you once again for listening, if you were, and good luck to you all in your journey. And I'll hand back to Marika now for some questions, if I can find my mouse. So that's it, mute myself. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Nikki. Really, really useful. And yet again, yes, it is a big topic. So apologies from our side, really, at Unlimited for asking you to do that in 45 minutes. But I think that's really, really great. Someone's already asking the actual web link for the quiz. I will send that through to everybody in an email afterwards, so you'll be able to do the quiz. Lots of thanks coming through. Very useful. So if anyone's got any questions, do type them in. We'll cover those now, or if you come up with questions afterwards, then we can also look at answering those later. But anything now, that would be just do type it in, and I can read those out for Nikki. I actually, while I let you have a little bit of a think, I actually had a couple of questions. I don't know. I mean, you mentioned, Nikki, a couple of companies. They're sort of larger companies, just as examples. not necessarily best practice examples, but do you have any companies that in your mind who you think do marketing really well? Maybe smaller businesses that you would say that you would consider as really good case studies?
Yeah, you're asking me about smaller companies. I'm trying to think. I mean, I can think of some obvious bigger ones, and often larger companies are actually a good place to go and look and see what they do, because they have got the budget, they have got the expertise, and you can often, I'm not saying you should copy people, but you can often get some good ideas. So I mentioned earlier Neil Remedies, who a business I know quite well. Their founder, Peter, is an amazing guy. I mean, he is so committed to what he's doing, and they try to get across the ethical side, the looking after people side. Obviously, they are an international brand, so don't compare yourself with them, but they do a lot of good work. The brand that's, I mean, I won't mention any names, but the brand I started working with, I mentioned the laundry range. I mean, where their whole business, their ethics run a core to their business. They really are a social enterprise, because they are working with a community in India who produce soap nuts for the product, which are obviously sustainable. They're supporting the community so that their kids can go to school. And then the product itself is made in a factory in Europe, and a lot of it's done handmade, done by hand. They employ disabled people as well, who can do some of the jobs required. And then their profits, they actually support various organisations like a Centre for Women. So you can see that the ethics is totally core to their business. And so obviously I'm working with their UK distributor to make sure that we get those messages across, that it is just as important about selling the product as actually the fact that the people producing the product are living a good life and being looked after. So as I said, look at some of the brands that share your values, and I'm glad to say they are growing. There are many more companies out there now who believe that their ethical objectives are just as important. There are also a lot of big brands who are, as people always do, jumping on the bandwagon as well. That's what I was saying, putting on a shiny exterior. And then when you delve under the surface, are they actually as ethical as they appear?
Okay. There's actually one of the listeners gave an example as well. A company called Who Made Your Pants, and I completely agree with you. A small social enterprise who uses social media and email marketing really well. They are really brilliant, and I'm a little bit biased because they are also an Unlimited award winner. And Nikki is just nodding to me and saying, yeah, I know them. So yes, just a great social entrepreneur. Who Made Your Pants? Worth Googling if you don't know about them. Just one question I think we've got time for, and I think it's hopefully quite useful for most early stage social entrepreneurs. So starting out, generally you're starting out with no budget whatsoever. So your marketing budget is zero. What would you say, Nikki, sort of your top suggestions? What could you then do? I mean, there are a number of things obviously you can do without money, but is there anything that you would recommend people do if they've got no money to put into it, but they perhaps have got time and maybe some friends to help them?
Yeah, we all probably start out with no money, and I think obviously I don't know whether you're aimed at consumers or business to business, but you want to get people on your side. And still, I mentioned very briefly on one of the slides with Sally about the importance of referrals. So you need to get people to understand what you're offering, first of all, and to encourage them to tell other people. And whether that's word of mouth, whether it's through social media, whatever it is, there's nothing better than selling by recommendation. And even though we're all very technological these days, the power of recommendation can't be underestimated. And certainly with business to business, it's still, when you're small, it's still the way most people find new business is by referrals. So, come up with ideas, get people on your side, give them a great experience, as I said, and then they will share that experience with other people, and then hope.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. I think we just at that final bit there we might have lost sound a bit, but I think we're back now, so hopefully this is all back up and running. So I think we're going to bring the webinar now to a close. Thank you so much, obviously, to Nikki for coming to our offices and sharing her expertise and running the session for us. And thank you to every one of you who've joined up and listened and participated throughout. I'm just looking at when our next webinar is, so I can flag that up. Our next one is, actually already on Friday this week, Friday the 16th of May, so the same time, 12 p.m., and we are looking at strategies for scaling up. So organizations who are really looking to increase their social impact, increase their reach. There are a number of ways in which you can do that, and we've got Fergus Leon from the Third Sector Research Centre sharing his findings and expertise on that topic. So do sign up if that sounds relevant to you. Otherwise, I think that's all from us. Unless Nikki, you've got any final words.
I'd just like to thank everyone for listening, and I wish you luck with your journey. And marketing isn't really as difficult as some people make it out to be. And hopefully I've made things seem a little bit simpler anyway. So thanks very much.
That's great. Thank you, everyone, and have a really great day.